Hi, in this video we are going to be talking about rational expressions and how to simplify them. I just have a few examples. If you do need more examples, please look at the videos that are found in WebAssign under the Resource tab. Or you can always look to your book and there's examples there as well. First one we're going to do is we're going to be dividing. So I have written this rational expression. Rational just means fractions, so anytime you hear the word rational, you should be thinking of fraction form. Just like a rational number can be written as a fraction, a rational expression is fractions of expressions. Okay, our job here is to simplify. So we are dividing two fractions, which means we're going to do the same processes as if they were numbers, which means we're going to change our division to a multiplication, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second. So I'm going to rewrite this, changing it into multiplication, and I'm going to reciprocate this. So I'm going to put the numerator in the denominator and the denominator in the numerator. Okay, now multiplying fractions, we can simply multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. This is going to create a huge mess. So another thing you want to remember from when you multiply numbers is we can reduce ahead of time. So we want to take advantage of that, especially with expressions, to reduce ahead of time. Now the thing to remember is we can reduce factors, not simply terms. So I cannot cancel x squared and x squared. So I'm going to be finding factors of these things. So I'm going to factor all the pieces that I possibly can. So I'm looking at that x minus 4. That is a linear expression. Linear expressions do not factor. This one here is the difference of two squares. So I will write this as x plus 2 and x minus 2. This one I'm going to factor it. My x and my x. Two numbers that multiply together to give me 6, positive 6, that add together to give a positive 5, so I know both positives. Multiply together to give me 6, add together to give me 5. So x plus 2 and x plus 3. I'm going to factor this one as well. I need two numbers that multiply together to give me a negative 4, that add together to give me negative 3. Multiply to give negative 4, add together to give a negative 3. So minus 4 and that plus 1. All right, so now I am going to reduce by canceling my like factors. So in a numerator and a denominator. So here this x minus 4 with that x minus 4. This x plus 2 with this x plus 2. And what I have left in the numerator is my x plus 3. In the denominator, x minus 2 and an x plus 1. I could multiply those two pieces out in the bottom. However, most of the time it's best to leave it in factored form because we might be doing something with this, like graphing it or solving it or evaluating it at a certain point. So I tend to not do more work than I have to, so I'm going to leave that in its factored form because it usually is a more helpful form. Okay, so multiplying and dividing, again, the thing to remember here is to factor our pieces, reduce ahead of time, so reduce as much as possible, so canceling factors, and then looking again when we get done, can I go further? Did I miss any common factors that we're hiding? So there we go. Here is a subtraction problem. Now with fractions, when we are subtracting or adding, we have to remember that we need common denominators. And common denominators are made by calculating or finding those like factors. So again, I'm going to need to kind of factor these pieces out. So I'm looking at that x squared minus 1, and that is a difference of squares, so x plus 1, x minus 1. And this one I'm going to write, just to remind us, that x plus 1 quantity squared is x plus 1 times x plus 1. So, to create my common denominator, I need to make sure that I have everything from both pieces. So I'm going to need this x minus 1 and that x plus 1. So that will be enough to get me this one. However, to make sure I have two x plus 1's in there, I need to add one more. I don't need to add 2 because I just need to make sure I have 2 in there when I'm done. Okay, now what I'm going to do is create my numerators. And one thing to remind yourself is when it comes to math, it's all about the little steps. It's all about not going too fast, about not losing those negatives, not losing those multiplication pieces, adding correctly, multiplying correctly. So it's all about the little details. So it isn't a matter of how fast we get to the end, but did we do every little detail on the way there? Making sure to dot the I's and cross the T's, so to speak. Okay, so we need to make sure that we do our numerators. We can't just put new denominators in there without changing the numerators. So to do that, we have to remember what did we have to add, or what did we multiply this guy by to create our new denominator. So this one we added that x plus 1. So I'll have that piece in there. This one we added the x minus 1. Now if I look at these, and if I were to reduce both of these pieces, I should go back. So just kind of keep that in mind. When you go one step forward, you should be able to easily go backwards as well. Okay, now I'm going to actually bring them together. And I am writing things really slow. And I'm going to write this bottom now as x plus 1 squared, just so that we can save a little space. All right, now I'm going to clean up my numerator. So I'm going to do my distribution and then combine my like terms. So I have 3x plus 3 minus 2x plus 2, making sure to multiply that negative 2 times that negative 1. This is the reason I did not distribute here, because I wanted to write it as a subtract 2 times that thing. So I make sure that that sign gets carried along to where it needs to go. That's a common mistake that students do, is they want to distribute and then they forget that when they're subtracting that whole thing, not just the first term, but the whole thing. Okay, so here's my denominator. Put that back in there. Another thing that happens is people lose that. It just somewhere disappears. But it can't disappear. It's like taking 1/4 and rewriting it as 1. So now combining my like terms, we have x plus 5 over x minus 1, x plus 1 squared. There you go. And I think I have a couple more, just to make sure. And they're going to get uglier as we go. So here we have complex fractions, which just simply means a fraction inside of a fraction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, here we have this minus that, and then we're dividing it all by this h. So I need to actually do the numerator first. So again, to do this numerator, we are going to need a common denominator. My common denominator is a times a plus h, because I need a whole a plus h. I can't just add h onto it. Okay, it's kind of like trying to take 1/2 and subtracting 1/3. Okay, I can't just subtract 1 from that 3 and make it a 2. It doesn't work that way. So if you think of this as 1 plus 1 and this as 1 plus 2, you can't just add another 1 to this piece here to make it work. Does not. So we need both of those factors. We needed both the 2 and the 3 to make a 6. Okay, so here we are. My new numerator here, I needed that A. And I'm going to save myself a little bit of time here because there's my minus. And this one I needed that A plus H. Okay, leave that. Okay. And some people do go this route. It's a little bit faster. Instead of writing it as 2 separate and then subtracting, they get that common denominator and they rewrite those numerators. It is a little bit of less space, but now distributing that negative through, okay, and A minus A is simply H. Okay, this is telling us we want to divide. So we're going to divide by H. I'll rewrite this just so we can see it. Divided by H. But in order to divide, we would invert and multiply times 1 over H. Now reducing, the H's are gone. I get negative 1 over A times A plus H. Okay. Again, some of these things that we're walking through, these examples that we're walking through, are ones that you will see when you go on into calculus class. This is the algebra that will take you to something. Once we get to this point, then comes the calculus part. The thing that we'll do in the calculus class comes from here. So if you make mistakes in the algebra, it's going to screw up the answer. So a lot of students find that it isn't the calculus that hurts them when they're taking calculus class. It's the algebra that needs to be remembered, or details. And again, it's all about the little details. All right. Last one for this section, and again, I picked something kind of ugly, but this is something we saw in the section 6. The prerequisite 6 or P6, and that was looking at these wonderful negative exponents popping up in here. And very similar to that, I'm going to do something like that to the numerators. So if you look at, we have that 1 plus x squared to an exponent, and they're in both pieces. So I'm going to pull out the smallest exponent. Just like if there was an x to the 4th and an x squared, we would pull out the smallest exponent. The smallest exponent is at negative. So I'm going to pull that one out. And I'm going to leave it out front for right now. Okay, and I'm going to clean up my numerator. So I'm not doing anything to the bottom right now. So that 1 plus x squared is going to stay there. Okay, now when we bring this out, that's like subtracting a negative. So that's like taking this 1/2 and adding another 1/2. So that would just give us that 1 plus x squared. This piece I pulled out, so it's completely out there. So that minus x squared shows up in there. Well, I guess I didn't need the line as long as it was. That's okay. Notice those x squares are gone. Okay, so I'm just left with the 1 in there. I'm also now going to rewrite this with a positive exponent, which means it's going to go into the denominator or into the basement. So all that's left in the numerator is the number 1. And we will have that 1 plus x squared to the 1/2 power and that 1 plus x squared. Notice they are the same. That 1 plus x squared. This is like to the power of 1, which means we can bring them together and add our exponents. So 1 plus 1/2 is 3/2. So I get 1 over 1 plus x squared to the 3/2. I would never have imagined that this ugly thing is no more than that. And again, these are things that will show up occasionally when you're doing some calculus material. So calculus will get us to this mess, and then the algebra is going to make it look nicer. So that's it for section 7. We'll come back in a little bit with section 8. I will see you all in the next video.